In a world where first impressions often mean everything, sometimes, the simplest gestures reveal the biggest hearts. Welcome to Heart of the Guardians, where stories of love, kindness, and unexpected humanity remind us that good still exists in this world. Today's story begins on a quiet evening in a small American town, a story that starts with a cheap diner, a nervous young man, and a woman who never expected what was about to unfold that night. Jacob was not rich. In fact, he barely made enough to keep his small apartment and pay his bills. He worked as a mechanic at a local auto shop, spending his days fixing other people's cars and his nights dreaming about a better life. He was humble, honest, and shy, one of those men who believed that money couldn't define love. For weeks, he'd been saving up just to take a girl named Emily out on a date. She worked at a nearby bookstore, and from the first day he saw her, standing behind the counter, her hair tied up, a gentle smile on her face, he felt something he couldn't quite explain. Jacob would sometimes go to that bookstore just to talk to her. Not to buy books, he wasn't much of a reader, but to hear her laugh, to ask how her day was going, to feel a connection he'd never had before. One Friday evening, after building enough courage, he finally asked her out. He stammered, Emily, would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime? Emily's smile widened. I'd love that, she said softly. That night, Jacob went home both excited and terrified. He wanted their first date to be special, but his wallet said otherwise. After paying rent and groceries, he barely had $30 left to his name. He looked through his phone, checking restaurants in town, Italian places, fancy steakhouses, and romantic bistros, but every single one was too expensive. Then his eyes landed on a small diner called Rosie's Grill, a place with checkered floors, old booths, and a sign that flickered when it rained. It wasn't fancy, but it was cozy. He decided that's where he'd take her. When Saturday came, Jacob wore his best shirt, pressed and tucked in, though the collar was slightly frayed. He borrowed a friend's car, bought a small bouquet of daisies, and picked Emily up right on time. Emily opened the door in a simple blue dress. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and she smiled shyly when she saw the flowers. They're beautiful, she said. Not as beautiful as you, Jacob replied, blushing immediately after realizing what he'd said. She laughed, and the sound of it eased his nerves. When they arrived at Rosie's Grill, Jacob hesitated. The neon sign flickered again, and the parking lot was nearly empty. He wondered if she'd be disappointed. Emily looked at the diner and then at him. This place looks nice, she said with genuine warmth. Inside, the smell of coffee and grilled onions filled the air. A waitress greeted them with a tired smile and led them to a corner booth. The menus were old and sticky, and the table wobbled slightly, but Emily didn't seem to mind. Jacob tried to make conversation, his hands fidgeting under the table. He talked about work, cars, and small-town life. Emily listened intently, asking questions and smiling as if she truly cared about every word he said. After a while, Jacob felt himself relax. She wasn't judging him. She wasn't pretending. Their food came, 2 burgers, fries, and chocolate milkshakes. Jacob apologized for not taking her somewhere fancier. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I wanted tonight to be special, but this was all I could afford. Emily looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Jacob, I don't care where we are. What matters is who I'm with. You've been nothing but kind to me. That means more than any fancy restaurant ever could. Her words touched something deep inside him. As they talked, a group of loud teenagers entered the diner, laughing and teasing each other. One of them, a tall boy wearing a leather jacket, looked at Jacob and smirked. Hey, check this out, he said to his friends, loud enough for everyone to hear. Some guy bringing his date to Rosie's. What a cheapskate. The others laughed. Jacob's face turned red. He wanted to disappear, but before he could say anything, Emily stood up, turned to the group, and said, you know what? At least he's got the courage to treat a woman with respect. That's something money can't buy. The diner went silent. The teenagers mumbled something and left soon after. Jacob sat there, stunned. No one had ever stood up for him like that. After they finished eating, the waitress came over with their bill, but something was strange. She placed the check on the table and whispered, "It's already taken care of." Jacob frowned. "What do you mean?" The waitress smiled. "That man who was sitting at the counter, he paid for your meal. He said, 'Tell them they reminded me what real love looks like.'" Then he left. Jacob turned to see an empty stool at the counter. A single $20 bill and a note rested beside an empty coffee cup. The note read, "Never feel ashamed of simplicity. The world needs more hearts like yours." Emily looked at Jacob with tears in her eyes. "See, kindness finds kindness." On their way out, Jacob held the door open for her. Outside, the night was cool, the streetlights glowing softly. He felt something shift inside him, a quiet confidence, a belief that maybe love didn't depend on what you had, but who you were. As they walked toward the car, a light drizzle began to fall. Instead of running for cover, Emily turned to him and said, "Dance with me." "Here, in the rain?" he asked, laughing. "Yes, right here." Answer, in that empty parking lot, beneath a flickering neon sign, they danced. The rain fell around them, the world grew quiet, and for that moment, time stopped. Jacob never forgot that night. It became the story he'd tell his children one day, the night he realized that love wasn't about money, or places, or grand gestures. It was about connection, kindness, and courage. But that wasn't the end. Weeks later, Jacob and Emily kept seeing each other. They went for walks, shared stories, and grew closer with every passing day. One evening, as they sat together on a park bench, Emily told him something she'd never told anyone before. "Jacob," she said softly, "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but when you first asked me out, I had just ended an engagement." Jacob's eyes widened. "I didn't know that. I didn't want to talk about it," she continued. "My ex-fiancé was wealthy. He used to take me to fancy restaurants, buy me gifts, but he never listened. He never cared about me. It was all about appearances. When I met you, I saw something different. You saw me for who I was, not what I looked like." Jacob took her hand gently. "I don't have much, Emily, but what I have, I'll always share with you." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "That's all I ever wanted." Months turned into years. Jacob and Emily built a life together, simple but beautiful. They eventually got married in a small ceremony behind that same diner, Rosie's Grill, where it all began. Rosie herself, the diner's owner, insisted on hosting their wedding reception for free. "You two brought life back to this old place," she said with a grin. When they danced for the first time as husband and wife, it started raining again, softly, like it had that first night. Emily looked up at the sky and laughed. "Looks like the universe remembers," she said. Everyone at the diner clapped, and even the old man who had once paid for their meal showed up. He handed Jacob a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note that said, "Pass it on," and a check for $10,000. Jacob stared at it in disbelief. Why would he do this? The man smiled. "Because once upon a time, someone did the same for me. You showed me that the world still has people who love without conditions. Use it to help others, son." And they did. Jacob and Emily used that money to start a community repair shop, one where they offered free car repairs to single mothers, veterans, and anyone struggling to make ends meet. Their story spread across the town, inspiring others to give, to help, to believe in love again. Years later, Rosie's Grill became a landmark, not because of its food, but because of the story that started there. Couples would come from miles away, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they could find a love as real as Jacob and Emily's. And if you ever pass by that little diner, you'll see a picture on the wall, Jacob and Emily, dancing in the rain, under that flickering neon sign. Beneath the photo are the words, "Love doesn't need luxury. It just needs honesty. The lesson is simple yet powerful. In a world chasing perfection, sometimes it's the imperfect places and moments that make life truly beautiful. So, next time you feel like you don't have enough to offer, remember Jacob and Emily. Remember that the value of love isn't in the price of dinner, but in the sincerity of the heart that offers it. Because real love doesn't come with a price tag, it comes with truth, courage, and kindness. And that's what makes it timeless. Thank you for watching Heart of the Guardians, where we keep stories of love, sacrifice, and humanity alive. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, sometimes, the smallest acts of love can create the biggest miracles.